When my son Devin decided to move into the mansion belonging to his millionaire mother-in-law, Vivian Sterling, his wife, Candace, Candy, as she preferred to be called, happily ran right after him, leaving me alone in this house she had always openly despised. I remember perfectly her last words before she climbed into the luxurious imported sedan Vivian had sent to pick them up. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old-timer!" She screamed it so loud that the neighbors stepped out to stare. Devin didn't say a word. He just loaded the luggage and drove away without looking back. I stood there, rooted to the spot on my front porch, watching them speed off toward the life of grand estates and servants they had dreamed about. 3 whole months passed without a single call, not one text, as if I had died to them. But then, one Thursday afternoon, they appeared. They arrived in a beat-up rideshare, lugging the same suitcases they had taken away full of grand illusions, but now with expressions of total defeat. And when I opened the door and saw them standing there, their eyes pleading for me to let them in, I received them in a way that left even Tony, the driver who brought them, completely stunned. Because what they didn't know was that those 3 months without them hadn't destroyed me. They had transformed me into someone entirely different. But to understand how we got to that moment, I have to go back to the beginning. I have to tell you what my life was like before it all fell apart, before Candace swept into our lives like a hurricane of ambition and poison. My name is Eleanor, and I'm 64 years old. This house where I live, this modest 2-story home in a working-class part of Northside Detroit, is everything I own. I bought it 30 years ago with the money from my husband's life insurance policy. He died when Devin was only 8 years old, in a construction accident. One day, he left for work, just like always, and he never came home. He left me alone with a little boy, some debt, and that insurance check, which I invested in the only thing that could give us stability: our own roof. I worked for 25 years as an administrative assistant at an accounting office. I didn't earn much, but it was enough. I raised Devin alone. I dressed him, fed him, paid for his schooling, his supplies, his dreams. He never lacked anything, except maybe a father, but I tried to be both. I worked my tail off, pulling double shifts when necessary. I saved every single penny so he could go to college. And he did. He studied, graduated as an engineer, and landed a good job. I was so proud. I thought all my sacrifice had finally paid off. Then Candace showed up. He met her at a company conference 4 years ago. She worked in public relations, always impeccably dressed, always with that air of superiority that made me nervous from the very first moment. When Devin introduced her, I smiled and hugged her like I do everyone, but she barely extended her hand, as if touching me would contaminate her. I should have seen it then. I should have noticed that look that swept over me from head to toe, evaluating my simple dress, my worn-out shoes, and my humble home. They got married 6 months later. It was a small wedding because I didn't have the money for anything big, and Devin didn't want me to go into debt. Candace was in a bad mood the whole day. Her mother, Vivian, didn't even attend. She sent a costly gift and a cold note saying she was on a business trip in Europe. I cooked the food with my own hands. I made my best mac and cheese, collard greens, and fried chicken, everything I knew how to do well. Candace barely tasted a bite. I overheard her telling a cousin, "It tastes like cheap takeout." After the wedding, Devin and Candace moved in with me. It was temporary, they said, just until they saved up enough money for their own place. I was happy. My house felt full again. I fixed up the upstairs room, the biggest one, the one with a view of the little backyard garden. I put out fresh sheets and clean curtains. I thought we were going to be a family. How naive I was. From the very first night, Candace started with her comments. The house smelled old, the walls needed paint, the bathroom was too small, the living room furniture looked like it was pulled from a dumpster. Every single day, she found something new to criticize. At first, Devin would defend her with nervous laughs, saying that she was just used to something else and that I should understand. And I did understand, or at least I tried to. I swallowed my words and my tears and kept cooking, cleaning, trying to make them feel comfortable. The months passed, and things got worse. Candace stopped eating my food. She said it was too greasy, too heavy, too common. She started ordering food from expensive restaurants and left the empty containers lying around for me to pick up. She would invite her friends over and apologize for the humble place where they had to live temporarily. Devin grew quieter and quieter. He came home late from work and shut himself in the room with her. I would hear them arguing. Candace would cry, saying she couldn't stand living like this anymore, that her mother was right and that she deserved better. Then, Vivian started to visit us. Visit isn't the right word. Inspect would be more accurate. She arrived in her imported car with a driver, dressed as if she were going to a gala. She would enter my house, looking at everything with barely concealed disgust. She'd sit on the edge of the sofa as if she feared catching poverty, and she would talk. God, how she would talk. She told Devin that he had potential, that he had built a good career despite his humble origins, and that with the right connections he could go far. And then she would look at me and smile, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Eleanor," she'd say, "it's admirable that you did all you could with so little. Not everyone has the good fortune to be born into a good position." I would clench my fists under the table and smile. I always smiled for Devin, because I didn't want to cause trouble, because I thought that if I was patient, if I was kind, eventually Candace and her mother would see that I only wanted the best for my son. How foolish I was. Kindness doesn't work with people like that. They see kindness as weakness, and they attack weakness like sharks attack blood in the water. Everything changed one Friday night. Vivian came for dinner. I had prepared everything carefully. I had cleaned the house until it shone. I had put fresh flowers on the table. Candace had barely spoken to me all week, but that night she seemed especially animated. During dinner, Vivian talked about her estate, her trips, and the opportunities she could offer Devin if he were just in the right place. And then she said it. "Devin, son, why don't you come live with me? I have an entire wing of the house that I don't use. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a private balcony. Candace would be so happy there, and you could focus on your career without—" She paused and looked directly at me without any unnecessary concern. The silence that followed was deafening. Devin looked at his plate. Candace's eyes were shining with excitement, and I felt my heart break into pieces, but I still smiled. "Devin has to decide what's best for him," I said, my voice quiet, even though I was screaming inside. And he decided. Of course he decided. A week later, they packed their things. The week that passed between Vivian's offer and the moving day was slow torture. Devin barely spoke to me. When I tried to start a conversation, he would look away and mumble something about being busy. Candace, on the other hand, was radiant. She walked around the house as if she no longer belonged there, as if every second spent here was an insult to her new position. I heard her on the phone with her friends, bragging about the mansion, the gardens, the heated pool. She never mentioned that I existed. It was as if the last 2 years had been erased from her memory. I tried to talk to Devin one last time. It was 2 nights before the move. I found him alone in the kitchen getting a glass of water. I approached carefully, as if I were approaching a startled animal. "Son, are you sure about this?" I asked softly. "This is your home. It will always be your home." He put the glass down on the counter harder than necessary. "Mom, I'm not a kid anymore. I need to build my own life. Candace isn't happy here." "And you?" He didn't answer. He just left the kitchen, leaving me standing there with my words hanging in the air. That was the last real conversation we had before he left. On moving day, a small rental truck arrived. They didn't have many things. Most of the furniture was mine. But Candace made sure to take every single gift I had ever given them, every photo where they appeared alone, as if she wanted to erase any trace of their time in this house. I helped them load the boxes. Devin avoided looking me in the eye. Candace supervised everything with that triumphant smile that pained me so much to see. When they finished loading, Vivian arrived in her luxury car. She didn't even get out. She honked the horn twice, like calling dogs. Candace practically ran to the car. Devin carried the last suitcases and finally looked at me. For a second, Just 1 second, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, regret. But then Candace called him from the car, and the moment vanished. "Take care, Mom," he said quickly and turned away. "Devin, wait!" I called, but he was already walking toward the car. Candace rolled down the window. She had that expression on her face, that mix of contempt and victory that I had learned to hate. And then she said it. She screamed those words that would be burned into my soul like hot iron. "Rot in that dusty old house, you washed-up old-timer. We're going to live the right way, not like rats in this filthy hole." The neighbors came out. Mrs. Carol Jenkins from the house next door, Mr. Frank Powell from across the street. Everyone heard. Everyone saw my humiliation. Devin got into the car without saying a word, without defending me, without even turning to look. Vivian started the engine, and they drove away. Just like that. I stood there on the curb with all my neighbors looking at me with pity, feeling the tears finally start to roll down my cheeks. Mrs. Jenkins came over and hugged me. "Oh, Eleanor, that woman is unforgivable, and your son should be ashamed." But I didn't want comfort. I didn't want pity. I went inside and closed the door. The house was terribly silent. For the first time in years, I was completely alone. I sat on the sofa, that old sofa Candace had criticized so much, and I cried. I cried for hours. I cried for my son, who had chosen a life of luxury over his own mother. I cried for the years I had dedicated to raising him, sacrificing for him, only to have him abandon me like this. I cried for the public humiliation. I cried for everything. The days passed and turned into weeks. At first, I checked my phone constantly, waiting for a call, a text, something, but nothing ever came. Devin didn't call even once. It was as if I were dead to him. The neighbors looked at me with sorrow when I went out. Some brought me food, as if I were in mourning. And I suppose I was. I was mourning the son I had lost, not to death, but to something worse, ambition and ingratitude. One night, while I was lying awake, unable to sleep, I heard noises outside. I peeked out the window and saw a group of kids spray painting something on my house wall. The next day, I discovered they had written "The Abandoned Woman's House." Someone in the neighborhood, probably a friend of a gossiping neighbor, had spread the story. Now I was the neighborhood spectacle, the pathetic woman whose son had left her for a better life. I cleaned the wall myself. It took me 3 hours and 2 buckets of soapy water. Mrs. Jenkins came over to help, but I told her no. I needed to do it alone. With every scrub, I felt something inside me changing. The sadness began to transform into something different, something harder, stronger. That night, for the first time in a month, I didn't cry. I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and looked around. I truly looked. Candace had been right about one thing. The house needed repairs, the walls were faded, the furniture was old, the backyard was neglected. But not because I was poor or miserable, as she had claimed, but because I had devoted every penny and every minute to taking care of Devin. I had forgotten to take care of myself. I had forgotten to take care of my own space. I opened a notebook and started making a list. Paint for the walls, fixing the leaky bathroom faucet, changing the curtains, fixing the garden. Every single thing Candace had criticized, I was going to improve, but not for her, not to prove anything to anyone, but for me. Because this was my house, my home, and I deserved to live in a beautiful place. The next day, I took out my savings. It wasn't much. I had spent almost everything on Devin's wedding and helping them out while they lived with me, but I had about $3,000 saved for emergencies, and this was an emergency, not of money, but of dignity. I went to the hardware store and bought paint. Cream for the living room, light green for the kitchen, a soft yellow tone for my bedroom. The employee, a young man named Marcus Reed, helped me load everything into a cab. "You're going to paint alone, ma'am?" he asked with concern. "Yes," I replied, and for the first time in weeks I smiled. "I'm going to paint alone." I started that same afternoon. I moved the furniture, covered everything with old newspapers, and got to work. I had never painted a house in my life, but I learned fast. The first day was a mess. I got covered in paint. I stained the floor, a curtain, but I didn't give up. I kept going, and something strange happened. With every stroke of the brush, with every wall that changed color, I felt as if I were painting over my pain. I was covering the past with something new, something that I was creating. Mrs. Jenkins would come to see me every day. "Eleanor, you're killing yourself working like this. You should hire someone." But I didn't want to hire anyone. I needed to do it with my own hands. I needed to feel that I had control over something in my life. For 2 weeks I painted, my back ached, my arms hurt, but I didn't stop. And when I finished the living room and saw those clean, fresh walls, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Pride. But there was still something gnawing at me, a question that wouldn't let me sleep. How was Devin? Was he happy in that mansion? Did he ever think about me? A part of me, the maternal part that never dies, still worried about him, still missed him, and that made me feel weak and foolish. Then I remembered something. Jasmine Hayes, my friend Jasmine from the office, where I had worked for so many years. She had become a lawyer after studying at night for years. We hadn't seen much of each other lately, but we were good friends. Maybe she could help me understand my options. Not to sue Devin, I would never do that. But maybe to protect myself. To make sure this house, the only thing I had, remained mine. I called her. Her voice on the phone sounded surprised but happy. "Eleanor, it's been so long. How are you?" And for the first time, I was honest. "Not very well, Jasmine. I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop near her office. I didn't know then that this call was going to change everything. The coffee shop where I met Jasmine was a small, cozy place, very different from the elegant restaurants Candace was probably frequenting now. I arrived 15 minutes early, nervous, not knowing exactly what I was going to tell her. When Jasmine walked in, I was surprised to see her so changed. She was no longer the timid secretary I remembered. Now she walked with confidence, wore stylish suits, and carried a leather briefcase. She had become someone important. I felt small next to her, but when she saw me, her face lit up with that warm smile I remembered. She hugged me tight, and in that embrace, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time, genuine acceptance. "Eleanor, tell me everything," she said as we sat down. And I told her everything. From the moment Devin met Candace to the day they moved out. I told her about the humiliations, the scorn from Vivian, the cruel words Candace had screamed at me in front of all the neighbors. I told her about the nights I spent sleepless, wondering what I had done wrong as a mother. Jasmine listened in silence, but I watched her expression harden with every detail. When I finished, she took my hand across the table. "Eleanor, what they did to you is unspeakable, but I need to ask you an important question. The house you live in, whose name is it in?" "Mine," I replied. "I bought it with my husband's life insurance 30 years ago. Everything is in my name." Jasmine nodded, thoughtful. "That's good, very good. Does Devin have any document that credits him as a co-owner?" "No, we never did anything like that. Why? Do you think he would try to take my house?" "With people like that millionaire mother-in-law, you never know. But there's something else more important I want you to understand, Eleanor. What Devin did, abandoning you like that, without providing any kind of support, could technically be considered elder abandonment. You are 64 years old. If you wanted to, you could initiate legal action." I froze. Sue my own son? "No, Jasmine, I would never do that. I'm not telling you to do it. I just want you to know that you have rights, that you are not defenseless. Devin has obligations to you, legal and moral, that he chose to ignore. Save every text, document every call, or rather the lack of them. Document everything, not because you're going to use it, but because you never know when you might need it." Her words kept ringing in my head for days. I had rights. I was not defenseless. It was such a simple yet powerful concept. My whole life, I had been the one who sacrificed, the one who gave, the one who made herself small so others could shine. But it didn't have to be that way anymore. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into 2 months. I continued working on the house. After painting, I repaired the leaky bathroom faucet. I hired Marcus, the young man from the hardware store, to help me with things I couldn't do alone. He turned out to be a hard-working, honest young man. He charged me fairly and did excellent work. We fixed the garden together, planting new flowers and repairing the fence. I replaced the old curtains with new ones in a light beige color that let in more light. I bought plants for the living room. Little by little, my house was transforming. And I was transforming too. I had lost weight from all the physical work. My skin had more color from spending time in the garden. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was internal. Something in my gaze had changed. I was no longer the scared, hurt woman who cried every night. I was becoming someone stronger, someone who didn't need anyone's approval to feel valuable. One afternoon, while watering the garden plants, I heard my phone ring. It was an unknown number. For a moment, I thought not to answer, but something made me take the call. Mom. Devin's voice sounded strange, tense, almost desperate. My heart leaped. After almost 3 months of absolute silence, he was finally calling. Devin, are you okay? Yeah, I'm fine. Listen, Mom, I need to ask you a favor. It's important. A favor? No, I miss you. No, I'm sorry I haven't called. No, how have you been? Just a favor. What do you need? My voice sounded colder than I intended. I need you to lend me money. It's $5,000. I need it urgently. I swear I'll pay you back in 2 months. I stayed silent. $5,000. I had exactly $5,200 in my bank account. It was all my savings, what was left after buying materials to fix the house. It was my security cushion, my peace of mind. What do you need the money for, Devin? He hesitated. It's expenses, things that have come up. I can't explain now, but I really need it. Expenses? Don't you live in a mansion with your millionaire mother-in-law? What kind of expenses could you possibly have? Mom, please don't start. Are you going to help me or not? The coldness in his voice hurt more than any of Candace's shouting. This was my son, the boy I had raised, talking to me as if I were a bank, a resource to exploit. Devin, I haven't seen you in 3 months. You haven't called even once to ask if I'm alive or dead. And now you call asking for money. Do you really expect me to say yes? I knew you were going to act like this. You're always the same, always playing the victim. Look, if you don't want to help me, just say so. Something inside me broke at that moment, but it didn't break with sadness. It broke with clarity. I finally saw my son for what he had become, a selfish man who only sought me out when he needed me. No, Devin, I will not lend you the money. The silence on the other end was long. Then I heard Candace in the background, shouting something I couldn't understand. Devin sighed in frustration. Fine. Perfect. I already knew I couldn't count on you. Goodbye, Mom. And he hung up. Just like that. I stood there in the garden with the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mix of pain and liberation. I had said no. For the first time in my life, I had said no to my son. And although it hurt, it also felt right. That night, I called Jasmine and told her about the call. She let out a low whistle. $5,000? Eleanor, something is happening at that mansion. Millionaires don't borrow $5,000 unless there are serious problems. You think so? I'm sure of it. Look, I have some contacts. Let me do a little digging on Vivian, the mother-in-law. Sometimes it's good to know who your son is dealing with. I didn't know what to think of that. Part of me didn't want to know. Part of me just wanted to move on with my life, forget about Devin and his new family. But another part, the part that was still a mother, needed to know he was okay. Even if he had abandoned me, even if he had used me, he was still my son. Jasmine called me a week later. Her voice sounded serious. Eleanor, we need to talk in person. Can you come to my office tomorrow? When I arrived at her office the next day, Jasmine had a folder on her desk. I sat down and she handed it to me. I found some interesting things about Vivian. For starters, her mansion isn't hers. She's renting it, and according to my sources, she's behind on payments. I also discovered that her supposed import business is deep in the red. She's been living on appearances, Eleanor, on pure smoke and mirrors. I stared at the papers, unable to believe it. But the luxury car, the clothes, all rented or on credit. Vivian was indebted up to her neck, and there was more. Apparently, she's been charging Devin and Candace rent. She charges them for the room, the food, everything. Your son isn't living for free in a mansion. He's paying for that privilege, and it seems Vivian is squeezing every penny out of them she can. I felt a mixture of emotions, satisfaction because Candace wasn't living the fairy tale she had imagined, but also concern. Devin was my son, after all. Even though he had abandoned me, I didn't want him to suffer. "What do I do with this information?" I asked. Jasmine shrugged. "Nothing for now. Just keep it. Something tells me you'll need it soon." And she was right, because 2 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. And when I opened it, there they were, Devin and Candace with their suitcases and faces of defeat, silently begging for me to let them in. And Tony, the rideshare driver who had brought them, watching the whole scene with wide eyes. But now, I was no longer the same woman they had left behind, and what I was about to do would leave everyone speechless. When I opened the door and saw Devin and Candace standing there with their suitcases soaked by the rain, time seemed to stop. Exactly 3 months and 2 weeks had passed since I last saw them. 3 months and 2 weeks since Candace had screamed those cruel words at me in front of the entire neighborhood. And now they were here at my door, wearing the same expensive clothes they wore when they left, but now wrinkled and stained. Candace no longer had that expression of superiority. Her eyes were red and swollen. Devin couldn't look at me directly. Tony, the driver, was unloading more suitcases from the car. I recognized those suitcases. They were the same ones they had left with, but now they looked beaten up, scratched, as if they had been carelessly tossed around. "Mom," Devin finally spoke. His voice sounded broken. "We need to talk to you. Can we come in?" I didn't move. I just stood there in the doorway looking at them. Candace was wrapped in a thin sweater that clearly wasn't enough for the rain. She was trembling, but I didn't know if it was from the cold or from something else. I noticed she was wearing the same green dress she had worn on moving day. That dress that had surely cost more than I made in a month was now dirty at the hem. "Talk?" I repeated slowly. "How interesting. 3 months ago, you didn't want to talk. 3 months ago, you only wanted to go live your life of luxury and leave me to rot in my dusty old house, you washed-up old-timer. Weren't those the words you used, Candace?" Candace flinched. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw her speechless. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Devin took a step forward. "Mom, please. We made a mistake. A huge mistake. Vivian, things didn't work out the way we expected." "Didn't work out the way you expected?" My voice sounded harder than it ever had. "What didn't work out the way you expected? The mansion wasn't grand enough. The food wasn't expensive enough. Or perhaps it was that Vivian turned out not to be as generous as you thought." Tony finished unloading the suitcases and approached. "Ma'am, that'll be $120 for the ride." Devin paled. I don't have cash right now. Do you accept a transfer?" "The app isn't working for me with this rain. I need cash." There was an awkward silence. Devin searched his pockets. Candace opened her purse and pulled out a wrinkled $50 bill. Between the two of them, they managed to scrape up $115. They were $5 short. I watched the scene without saying a word. These were the same two people who, just months ago, had left in a luxury car, bragging about their new life, and now they couldn't pay a taxi. Tony looked at me expectantly. He knew what he was waiting for, that I, the good, self-sacrificing mother, would pull out the missing $5 and solve the problem, just as I always did. but I just crossed my arms. "I'm sorry, Tony. I didn't order this cab." Devon's eyes widened in surprise. Candace looked on the verge of tears. Tony sighed in frustration. "Look, folks, I need to get paid. I have a family to support." "We'll pay you," Devon said desperately. "Give me 2 days, and I'll transfer you everything. Tip included, I swear." Tony didn't look convinced, but he finally accepted the $115. 2 days. "If I don't get the rest, I'll have to report this." He got back into his car, muttering something about problematic customers, and drove off, leaving the three of us standing there under the rain that was starting to pour. Devon picked up a suitcase. "Mom, please. We're soaking wet. Can we come inside?" I looked behind me at my house, my clean, newly painted house, my sanctuary that I had built with my own hands over the past 3 months, the place where I had finally found peace after years of being belittled and used. And then I looked at my son and his wife standing there, expecting me to do what I had always done, sacrifice myself for them. "No," I simply said. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the rain seemed to stop for a second. Devon looked at me as if he hadn't understood the word. "What?" I said no. "You cannot come into my house." Candace let out a sob. "Eleanor, please, we have nowhere to go. Vivian threw us out. She threw us out without money, without anything. We've been sleeping in cheap motels for the last 4 days, but we don't have any money left. Please, just for tonight." "Just for tonight?" I repeated. "Like when you moved into my house, temporarily for a few months, and those months turned into almost 2 years? Like when you made me feel every single day of those 2 years that my house was an unworthy hovel? Like when you invited your friends over and apologized for the humble place you had to live? I was wrong. I'm sorry, truly, I'm sorry." Candace's tears ran down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. "You know what's sad, Candace?" "What?" "I believe you. I believe you're sorry. But you're not sorry you treated me like dirt. You're sorry that you're now in the position I was in. You're sorry for your own downfall, not for my pain." Devon dropped his suitcase. "Mom, I'm your son. Are you really going to leave me in the street?" Those words, those damned words designed to make me feel guilty, to activate that maternal instinct he knew still lived inside me. And yes, I felt it. I felt that tug in my heart, that urge to open the door and let them in. But I also remembered something. I remembered Jasmine's words, "You have rights. You are not defenseless." I remembered the nights I spent crying, wondering what I had done wrong. I remembered the public humiliation, the graffiti on my wall, the looks of pity from the neighbors. "Devon, when you left 3 months ago, you left me," I countered. "Not the other way around. You chose a mansion and money over your own mother. You kept quiet when your wife insulted me in front of the whole neighborhood. You didn't call even once in 3 months to know if I was alive or dead. The only time you called was to ask me for $5,000, and when I said no, you hung up on me. So no, I'm not leaving you in the street. You put yourself there." "But, Mom—" "No buts, Devon. For 3 months I've been fixing this house. Do you see the walls? I painted them myself. Do you see the garden? I planted it myself. This house is no longer the place you left. It's my home, my sanctuary. And you two are no longer welcome here." Candace fell to her knees on the wet pavement. "Please, Eleanor, I beg you, don't do this to us. We made a terrible mistake. I know, but we need you." "You need me?" I repeated bitterly. "Now you need me. When you had a mansion, you didn't need me. When you had money, you didn't need me. You only need me when you have no one else left." Mrs. Jenkins had come out of her house with an umbrella. She stood in her yard, watching. Mr. Powell had also come out. The same neighbors who, 3 months ago, had witnessed my humiliation were now witnessing this. But this time, I wasn't the humiliated one. This time, I was the one with the power. Devon ran his hands through his wet hair. "Fine, I get it. We treated you badly. We were ungrateful. What do you want us to do? Do you want us to kneel? To ask for your forgiveness 1,000 times? I'll do it. I'll do whatever it takes, Mom, but please just let us in for tonight. We'll find another place tomorrow. No. Mom, it's pouring rain. We have no money. What are we going to do? I don't know, Devon. It's not my problem. Maybe you can call Vivian or Candace's rich friends, or maybe you can do what I had to do when I was left alone. Figure it out yourselves. Candace was still on her knees, sobbing. Devon looked at me with a mixture of disbelief and rage. I could see that he didn't understand how his mother, the woman who had always given in, who had always forgiven, was now denying him help. You know what the worst part is? I continued, feeling the words flow out of me like a river that had been contained for too long. That even now, even in this moment, you are not here because you miss me. You didn't come to apologize. You didn't come because you realized you treated me wrong. You came because you had no other choice. I am your last resource, your plan Z, and I'm sorry, but I am no longer available to be anyone's plan. I reached for the doorknob, ready to close the door. Devon took a desperate step forward. Wait. Please, just give me a chance to explain. Vivian isn't who we thought she was. She lied to us. She used us. She made us work like servants in her house. She charged us for everything, the food, the water, the electricity. We were living worse than when we were with you, and when we couldn't pay anymore. She threw us out like dogs. She took our phones, our credit cards, everything. She only left us with these suitcases of clothes. Mom, we made a terrible mistake, but we're family. You always say family is the most important thing. I looked him directly in the eyes. I used to say that, but family goes both ways, Devon. And you showed that to you? I wasn't family. I was convenience. And with that, I stepped inside and closed the door. I heard Candace scream my name. I heard Devon pound on the door, but I didn't open it. I stood there on the other side, my back against the wood, feeling my heart pound fiercely. Tears ran down my cheeks, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. Outside, the knocking continued for a few more minutes. Then I heard voices. Mrs. Jenkins had come out with her big umbrella and was offering to take them to a nearby shelter. Mr. Powell offered them money for a motel. My neighbors, the people Candace had so despised, were showing more compassion than I was. But that was their decision. I had made mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my newly painted living room, drinking tea, thinking about everything that had happened. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me wanted to run out and bring them back. But another part, the stronger part, knew I had done the right thing. For the first time in my life, I had chosen my own dignity over someone else's needs, and it felt terrifying. But it also felt good. The next morning, I woke up early after sleeping only a few hours. My first thought was of Devon and Candace. Where had they spent the night? Were they okay? That maternal voice inside me still worried, still felt that tug of guilt. But I forced myself to get up, prepare coffee, and sit in my newly fixed garden. The flowers I had planted were blooming. The morning sun made the leaves, wet from last night's rain, sparkle. Everything looked clean and fresh, new. Mrs. Jenkins knocked on my door around 9 o'clock. She brought freshly baked sweet rolls and that expression of concern I knew so well. "Eleanor, are you okay?" she asked as she came into the kitchen. She paused when she saw the painted walls, the new details. "Oh, but your house is beautiful. I haven't been in here since you started fixing it up." "Thank you, Carol. Sit down. I'll pour you some coffee." We sat at the small kitchen table. Carol fiddled with her cup, clearly wanting to say something, but not knowing how to start. "Say it," I finally told her. "I know you came to talk about last night." She sighed. "I took them to Pastor Michael's church shelter. He gave them a room for 3 nights. Eleanor, they looked destroyed. Candace didn't stop crying the whole way. Devon barely spoke." I felt that familiar weight in my chest. "And you came to tell me I was too hard on them." "No," Carol replied, surprising me. "I came to tell you I'm proud of you. What you did last night took courage that few of us have. I saw how they treated you, Eleanor. I saw them leave here as if you were garbage, and now they show up expecting everything to be fine. No, honey, you did the right thing." Her words lifted a huge weight from me. I had feared everyone would think I was a cruel, heartless mother, but Carol, who had known me for 20 years, who had seen everything, supported me. "But are they okay?" I asked, despite everything. "Do they have food?" "The church gives them meals, and Frank gave them $200, more than they deserve if you ask me, but you know Frank, he has a heart of gold." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and something else, something I couldn't fully identify. I didn't want Devin to suffer, but I didn't want to rescue him either. It was like walking an emotional tightrope. The following days were strange. I knew Devin and Candace were at the shelter just 4 blocks from my house, but I didn't go to see them. I didn't call. I continued with my life. I kept working on the house details. Marcus came to install new light fixtures in the living room. The place looked more and more welcoming, more like a true home. One afternoon, while watering the garden plants, I heard voices in the street. It was Candace. She was talking to someone on the phone, practically shouting, "I don't care what you have to do. I need you to help me. I'm your cousin, remember? Or did you forget when I lent you money for your business?" There was a pause, then Candace shouted in frustration and hung up. I watched her walk down the street with her shoulders slumped, defeated. She was wearing the same clothes from 3 days ago. Her hair, which had always been perfectly styled, was now messy and dull. I hid behind the fence so she wouldn't see me, feeling a mix of satisfaction and pity. Jasmine called me that night. "How are you? I heard what happened." "How did you find out?" "Eleanor, you live in a neighborhood. News travels. Carol is friends with my aunt. She told me everything. And let me tell you something, you did the right thing." "I don't feel good about it." "You're not supposed to feel good. You're supposed to feel strong. There's a difference. Do you regret it?" I thought about her question. Did I regret it? "No," I finally replied. "I don't regret it." "Good, because I have more information about Vivian that I thought you'd want to know. I can come to your house tomorrow." The next day, Jasmine arrived with another folder. We sat in my living room, and she spread several documents on the coffee table. Vivian is in serious financial trouble. She has lawsuits from 3 different creditors. The house she rents is going to be foreclosed on next month. Her import business never actually existed. It was a front for money laundering, and now the authorities are investigating her. Eleanor, that woman is headed for jail. I was speechless. Does Devin know all this? I don't think so. Vivian is very good at keeping up appearances. But there's more. I found out that she charged Devin and Candace $2,000 a month for that room. $2,000. And that doesn't count food and other expenses. She squeezed them until they were dry. That's why your son asked you for the $5,000. He was desperate trying to pay the debts he had with Vivian. $2,000 a month, I repeated incredulously. They could have rented a decent apartment for that price. Exactly. But Vivian convinced them that living in the mansion was an investment in their future, that the connections they would make would be worth it. Lies. There were no connections, no opportunities. There was only exploitation. I looked at the documents, feeling a mix of emotions. On one hand, I was right to have refused to give Devin money. That money would have gone straight into Vivian's hands. On the other hand, my son had been the victim of a professional manipulator. What do I do with this information? I asked. Nothing for now. I just wanted you to know the full truth. Devin and Candace made bad decisions, yes, but they were also manipulated by someone much more skilled than them. After Jasmine left, I sat thinking for hours. Devin wasn't a bad man. He was weak. He had made the wrong choice. He had been dazzled by promises of wealth and status, but deep down, he was still my son, the boy I had raised. But I also understood something else. The fact that he had been manipulated didn't erase what he had done to me. It didn't erase the humiliations, the abandonment, the disrespect. One thing did not cancel out the other. On Friday afternoon, Pastor Michael knocked on my door. He was an older man, about 70 years old, with kind but firm eyes. "Eleanor, I need to talk to you about your son." I invited him in and served him fresh water. He sat on the sofa and looked at me with that expression priests have when they are about to give a sermon. Devin and Candace have to leave the shelter tomorrow. The 3 nights I gave them are up. I don't have any more space. I know, Pastor. Devin asked me to talk to you, to intercede for him. He told me what happened, his version at least. And what did you tell him? I told him the truth, that he had committed a terrible sin by abandoning you, that he had failed in his moral duty. But I also told him that everyone deserves a chance at redemption. I'm not asking you to let them move back in with you, Eleanor. That would be too much. But perhaps you could help them find a place, or lend them some money so they can start over. I looked him directly in the eyes. Pastor, with all due respect, no. He sighed. I understand your pain, daughter, but vengeance is not the path. It's not vengeance, Pastor. It's protection. For 3 months, I've been rebuilding myself. If I let them in now, even a little, I'll fall back into that pattern of sacrificing myself for people who don't value me. Devin is an adult. He's 32 years old. He has an education. He can work. He can get ahead, but not with my help. Not anymore. Pastor Michael remained silent for a long moment, then nodded slowly. You're right. May God bless you, Eleanor, and may He give Devin and Candace the strength to face the consequences of their actions. After he left, I sat in my garden and cried, not tears of sadness, but of liberation. Every person who came expecting me to yield, to be the self-sacrificing, long-suffering mother, left understanding my position. I wasn't being cruel. I was being strong. That night, alone in my beautiful, quiet house, I knew I had crossed a point of no return. There was no going back. Devin would have to find his own way, and I was finally finding mine. On Saturday morning, I woke up with a strange feeling of peace. For the first time in months, I had slept through the night without nightmares, without waking up thinking about Devin. I prepared a quiet breakfast, coffee with toast, and sat in my newly fixed garden to enjoy the morning sun. Butterflies fluttered around the new flowers. Everything felt perfect. Then the doorbell rang. My heart skipped a beat. Was it Devin again? Was he coming to beg again? I took a deep breath and went to open it. To my surprise, it was Marcus, the young man from the hardware store who had helped me with the repairs. Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. I hope I'm not bothering you so early. Not at all, Marcus. Is something wrong? He smiled shyly. No, nothing bad. It's just that my grandmother has a cat that had kittens 2 months ago. They're ready for adoption now. And I thought maybe you'd like one. This house feels so cozy now. It would be perfect for a pet. The idea took me by surprise. I had never had pets. Devin was allergic as a child, and after that, I simply never thought about it. But now, looking at my renovated house, my rebuilt life, the idea of having a small living being to keep me company sounded wonderful. What color are they? There are 3. One is completely white, another has orange and black patches, and the last one is gray with green eyes. They're very affectionate, ma'am, and they're already litter-trained. I'd like to see the gray one, I said impulsively. An hour later, Marcus returned with a cardboard box. When he opened it, the most beautiful kitten I had ever seen appeared. Soft gray fur, bright green eyes, small and perfect. She looked at me with curiosity and meowed softly. She's precious, I whispered, taking her in my arms. The kitten immediately snuggled against my chest, purring. I felt something melt inside me. I'll keep her. Marcus smiled broadly. I knew you'd like her. My grandmother says this one was the most affectionate of all, as if she were waiting for the right person. After Marcus left, I sat on the sofa with the kitten on my lap. I stroked her gently while she purred. You need a name, I told her. I thought for a moment and smiled. I'll call you Luna, because you arrived just as my life is starting over, like a new moon. The following days were different. I no longer felt alone in the house. Luna followed me everywhere. She slept in my bed, sat on my lap while I watched television. Mrs. Jenkins came to meet her and fell in love with her immediately. "Oh, Eleanor, look at her. She's gorgeous. This house needed life like this. Cheerful, positive." She was right. The house no longer felt like the place where I had suffered humiliations. It felt like a true home. My home. One afternoon, while buying food for Luna at the pet store, I ran into Vivian. We literally bumped into each other, turning a corner in an aisle. She was wearing dark sunglasses, but I recognized her immediately. She looked different. Her clothes, though still designer, were wrinkled. Her hair didn't have that perfect, expensive salon sheen. She looked tired, old. "Eleanor?" she said in surprise, removing her sunglasses. "Vivian," I replied coldly. There was an awkward moment of silence. She looked at my cart with the cat food, the litter, the toys. Then she looked at me, evaluating me as she always did. But this time, she didn't find the humble, frightened woman she remembered. "I heard about Devin and Candace," she finally said. "That they came to your house?" "Yes, they came." "And you didn't let them in?" "No." She let out a bitter laugh. "I don't blame you. They were both fools. I thought Devin had more guts, more ambition, but he turned out to be as weak as his father probably was." Rage exploded inside me. "Don't you dare talk about my husband. He was worth 1,000 times more than you. He was an honest, hard-working man, not a liar who lives on appearances." Her eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "What you heard. I know everything about you, Vivian. I know your mansion is rented. I know you're in debt. I know you charge Devin and Candace $2,000 a month for a room. I know everything." Her face paled. For the first time since I'd known her, Vivian looked small, vulnerable. "You don't know anything," she mumbled, but her voice lacked conviction. "I know enough. I know you used my son. You squeezed him until there was nothing left to take. And now, when things get tough for you, you threw them out like garbage, just like they did to me. They made their own decisions." "Yes, they did. And now they're paying for them, just as you'll pay for yours. I've heard the authorities are very interested in your import business. Or should I say, your non-existent business." Her face twisted into fury. "Watch what you say, you old busybody." "Oh? You're going to sue me?" "Go ahead. I'd love to see your finances exposed in court." I leaned closer to her and lowered my voice. "You thought I was a weak, stupid woman, someone you could belittle. But you were wrong. I raised my son alone. I bought my house alone. I rebuilt myself alone. While you sink in your lies and your debts, I am stronger than ever." I didn't wait for her response. I paid for my things and walked out of the store with my head held high. My hands were shaking, my heart was pounding, but I felt powerful. I had told the woman who had caused so much harm the truth about herself. That night, Jasmine called me, excited. "Eleanor, you won't believe this. Vivian was arrested this afternoon. Apparently, the investigation moved faster than expected. They're charging her with fraud and tax evasion. She's going to trial." I sat on the sofa, absorbing the news. Luna jumped onto my lap. "And Devin? Is he involved?" "No, he didn't know anything. He was just a victim of his mother-in-law. But this means that any hope they had of recovering the money they gave Vivian is gone. That money is lost." After hanging up, I sat thinking. Devin and Candace had lost everything. Their money, their pride, their dreams of grandeur. And I, the woman they had abandoned, was better than ever. On Sunday, I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I went to the park alone. I walked the trails, watched families playing, couples holding hands. Before, those scenes would have made me feel lonely and sad. But now I felt free. I didn't need anyone to be happy. I had my house, my kitten, my inner peace. On a park bench, I met a woman named Ruth. She was about my age with perfectly styled white hair and a kind smile. We started talking, and it turned out she also lived alone. She had also overcome a difficult family situation with her children. "It's liberating, isn't it?" she told me. "When you finally realize you don't have to live for others, that you can live for yourself." "Yes," I replied, smiling. "Very liberating." We exchanged numbers and agreed to meet the next week for coffee. I had a new friend, a new connection. My life was filling up with good things, with good people, without Devon, without Candace, without toxic people who only dragged me down. When I returned home that afternoon, I sat in my garden with Luna on my lap and looked at my house. The newly painted walls gleamed under the afternoon sun. The flowers I had planted were in full bloom. Everything was perfect. Everything was mine. And for the first time in my life, I felt completely satisfied with who I was and where I was. I didn't need my son's approval. I didn't need to be the self-sacrificing, long-suffering mother. I could simply be Eleanor, a 64-year-old woman who had survived the storm and come out stronger on the other side. My phone vibrated. It was an unknown number. I ignored it. If it was Devon, I had nothing left to say. If it was someone else, they could leave a message. For now, I just wanted to enjoy this moment of perfect tranquility. Luna purred louder, as if she understood exactly how I felt. I stroked her gently and closed my eyes, letting the sun warm my face. This was my life now, and it was beautiful. The weeks continued to pass, and my life continued to flourish in ways I never imagined. Ruth became a close friend. We saw each other twice a week to walk in the park or grab coffee. She introduced me to her group of friends, all women our age, who met on Thursdays for dance classes. At first I was embarrassed, but they convinced me to try it. The first dance class was a disaster. I stepped on my partner's feet 3 times and got confused with all the steps. But the women laughed with me, not at me, and by the 3rd class, I was following the rhythm. There was something liberating about moving my body to the beat of the music, about letting go without thinking about anything else. During that hour of dancing, I wasn't the abandoned mother, I wasn't the humiliated woman. I was simply Eleanor dancing. One afternoon after class, Ruth and I went for coffee. She looked at me with that expression I already knew, the one that meant she wanted to say something important. "Eleanor, you look different, not just physically. Although you've lost weight and you look radiant. It's something in your eyes, in the way you walk. You're being reborn." Her words filled me with emotion. I feel reborn. It's strange. I thought Devon's abandonment would destroy me, but it actually freed me. Sometimes people have to leave our lives so we can discover who we really are without them, she said wisely. Meanwhile, I had heard things about Devon and Candace through neighborhood gossip. After leaving the church shelter, they had found a tiny room in a boarding house on the poorer side of town. Devon had found work as a bicycle delivery person, something he never would have considered before. Candace was working cleaning houses. The same woman who had rejected my food for being too common was now scrubbing other people's floors to survive. Mr. Powell told me he had seen them one afternoon. They looked exhausted, Eleanor, defeated. Devon saw me and looked down. He didn't even say hello. The shame was all over his face. I didn't feel satisfaction hearing that, but I didn't feel pity either. I just felt a kind of quiet neutrality. They were living the consequences of their choices, just as I was living the consequences of mine. One day in October, while watering my plants, I saw someone approaching my house. It was Candace, alone. She looked unrecognizable. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup. She wore old jeans and a worn-out t-shirt, but the most striking thing was her expression. There was no trace of the arrogance she used to wear like a crown. There was only weariness and humility. She stopped in front of my fence. "Eleanor, can we talk?" I put down the hose and looked at her. "Does Devon know you're here?" "No, he doesn't want to come. He says he's too proud to beg again, but I need to talk to you." I considered telling her to leave, but something in her posture, in that genuine humility I had never seen in her, made me hesitate. "5 minutes out here." She nodded gratefully. She stayed on the other side of the fence, as if respecting an invisible boundary. "I want to apologize. I know it doesn't mean anything coming from me. I know I was awful to you, but I need you to hear it anyway." "Okay, I'm listening." I grew up with my mother telling me that money was the most important thing, that appearances were everything, that people without money were less. And I believed her. I married Devin because I saw potential in him, but also because I thought I could mold him, turn him into the rich, successful man my mother wanted. When we lived with you, every day reminded me of what I didn't want to be: poor, simple, ordinary. So I attacked you. I made you feel small so I could feel big." She paused, wiping away the tears that were starting to fall. "But my mother used us just like I used you. She squeezed us dry, and when we weren't useful, she discarded us. And that's when I understood. I understood what I did to you, the pain I caused. Now I'm the one cleaning other people's houses. I'm the one wearing second-hand clothes. I'm the one with nowhere to go." "And what do you want me to do with that?" I asked without emotion. "Nothing. I don't want anything. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, that I understand you'll never forgive me. And that's okay. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I realize how awful I was." I looked at her for a long moment. This apology was different from the one she had given in the rain a month ago. That one had been desperate, manipulative. This one was genuine, pained, real. "I believe you," I finally said. "I believe you mean it. But you're right about one thing. I'm not going to forgive you. At least not now. Maybe never. Because forgiveness isn't something that's given just because someone apologizes. It's something that's earned with time and actions. And frankly, Candace, I have no interest in giving you that time." She nodded, accepting my words. "I understand. Thank you for listening to me." She turned to leave, but stopped. "Your house looks beautiful, by the way. It always was beautiful. I was just too blind to see it." I watched her walk away down the street, her shoulders slumped, but with something akin to peace in her gait. I didn't feel victory. I didn't feel anything in particular, just a quiet closing of a chapter. That night, Jasmine came to visit me with news. "Vivian's trial is scheduled for next month. My contact at the prosecutor's office says the evidence is solid. She'll probably spend several years in prison." "Poor Devin," I said automatically. Then I was surprised by my own words. Jasmine looked at me curiously. "You still worry about him?" "He's my son. A part of me will always worry, but that doesn't mean I'm going to rescue him. It can be two things at the same time." "You are stronger than you think, Eleanor." The days of November brought a fresh, renewing air. My routine had become pleasant. I woke up early, made coffee, played with Luna, tended my garden. Thursdays, I went dancing. Sundays, to the park with Ruth. My house was always clean and cozy. I had bought new paintings for the walls, plants for every corner. Everything felt alive and full of light. One morning, Mr. Powell knocked on my door. "Eleanor, I need to ask you a favor. My nephew, Kenneth Ken Davis, just moved to town. He's looking for work as an accountant. Could you give him some advice? You worked at an accounting office for years." "Of course, with pleasure." Ken turned out to be a nice man in his 50s, divorced, with a shy but genuine smile. We talked for hours about the accounting world, about firms that might be hiring. When he left, he thanked me profusely. "You're very kind, Mrs. Eleanor. Not many people take the time to help strangers." After he left, I realized something. I was meeting new people, making real connections. My world was expanding in beautiful, natural ways. I was no longer trapped in that toxic bubble of pleasing Devin and enduring Candace. November turned into December. The streets filled with Christmas decorations. Normally, this time of year made me sad because I remembered Christmas with Devin as a child. But this year I felt different. Ruth invited me to a holiday dinner with her group of friends. I accepted gladly. The night of the dinner, as I got ready in front of the mirror, I really saw myself for the first time in months. My face looked fuller of life. My eyes shone. I had recovered something I had lost years ago. My joy. Not the joy that comes from making others happy, but the genuine joy that comes from being at peace with yourself. Luna meowed from the bed as if approving my appearance. I laughed and stroked her. "Do you think I look good?" she purred, which I interpreted as a yes. The dinner was wonderful. There were 8 of us women, all with similar stories of loss and rebirth. We laughed, ate, and toasted to second chances. For the first time in years, I felt part of something, a community, a chosen family. When I returned home that night, I found something on my door, an envelope. I opened it curiously. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Mom, I know you don't want to talk to me. I understand, but I wanted you to know that I got a better job. I'm not delivering food anymore. I'm working at an engineering firm again. I don't earn much, but it's a start." Candace and I moved into a small but decent apartment. We're learning to live with less, to appreciate what we have. I know I failed you in unforgivable ways. I just want you to know that every day I think about you and everything you did for me. Someday, if you give me the chance, I'm going to prove that I can be the son you deserved all along. Devin. I read the letter twice. I felt something shift in my chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but maybe it was the beginning of something. The recognition that Devin was changing, growing, learning. I folded the letter and put it away in a drawer. I wasn't going to respond. Not yet. But I wasn't going to throw it away either. Time would tell what to do with it. January arrived with unusual cold. I had ended the year surrounded by my new friends, celebrating at Ruth's house with a simple but joyful dinner. For the first time in decades, I didn't spend New Year's thinking about what I lacked, but thanking God for everything I had gained. One morning in mid-January, while having coffee in my garden wrapped in a thick sweater, I saw a car stop in front of my house. It was an old, beat-up car. Devin got out of the driver's seat. Candace got out on the other side. Both looked different from the last time, thinner, more serious. But there was something in their faces I hadn't seen before. Determination. Devin carried a box in his hands. They approached my fence and just stood there, waiting. They didn't ring the doorbell, they didn't shout, they just waited for me to decide if I wanted to talk to them. I looked at them for a long time. Luna was in my lap, purring. My coffee was hot, my garden was beautiful. I had everything I needed. I could simply ignore them and go inside, but something about the way they were standing there, respectful, patient, made me get up. I walked toward the fence, but I didn't open it. "What do you want?" Devin lifted the box. "We brought this. It's all the documents for the house. Deeds, receipts, everything is in your name, but we want you to know that we would never, ever try to take your home. I talked to a lawyer and signed this." He pulled out a piece of paper. "It's a legal waiver of any right to the property. Even though I technically had no right, I wanted it in writing, so you never have to worry." I took the paper and read it. It was exactly what he had said. A signed and notarized legal declaration. Devin relinquished any claim to my house now and in the future. "Why?" I asked. "Because you sacrificed everything for me for 30 years. You bought this house to give me a home. You worked yourself ragged to give me an education, and I repaid you by spitting in your face. The least I can do is make sure no one can ever take the only thing you have." Candace stepped forward. "Eleanor, I also want you to know something. I got a stable job cleaning offices. It doesn't pay much, but it's honest. And every day when I clean floors, I think about you, about how you cleaned your house with such care while I mocked it, about how you cooked delicious food while I rejected it. I learned that honest work has dignity, something my mother never taught me." "My mother is going to prison," Devin continued. 5 years, the judge said. "Part of me feels relieved. She can't manipulate anyone else. Candace and I are in therapy. We're trying to understand why we made the decisions we made, why we were so cruel to you." I looked at both of them. There was something genuine in their words, something that hadn't been there before. "I'm glad you're working on yourselves truly, but that doesn't change what happened." "We know that," Devin said. "We're not here asking for forgiveness. We don't deserve your forgiveness. We just wanted you to know that we are changing, that we learned, and that if someday, maybe years from now, you decide to give us another chance, we'll be ready. But if you never do, we'll understand that too." I took the box of documents. "Anything else?" Candace pulled an envelope from her purse. "This is for you. It's $500. I know it's not much compared to everything you gave us, but it's what we could save in these months." And every month, we're going to give you more until we've paid back everything we owe you. Every single penny you spent on our wedding, our food, everything." "I don't want your money," I said automatically. "Please, accept it," Devin insisted. "Not for us, but for you, because you deserve to recover what you invested in us, because you never should have had to pay for any of it." I stared at the envelope. $500, a small amount, but for them, in their current situation, it surely had required months of saving and sacrifice. "Fine," I finally said, taking the envelope. "I will accept it, but let it be clear. This does not mean things are okay between us. This does not mean I have forgiven you." "We know," they both said in unison. "You have a long road ahead of you if you truly want to prove you've changed. Not with words, with actions. For years." Devin nodded, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be the son you deserved, Mom. Even if you never forgive me, even if you never want to see me again, I'm going to try anyway." They turned to leave. I watched them walk to their beat-up car, get in, and drive away. This time, I didn't feel satisfaction or pain, just a kind of quiet closure. They had come with humility, recognized their mistakes, and taken responsibility. Did that mean everything was forgiven? No. Forgiveness doesn't work that way. It doesn't arrive in a dramatic moment with pretty words. It arrives slowly with time, with consistent actions that demonstrate real change. That afternoon, Jasmine came to visit me. I told her about Devin and Candace's visit. She examined the legal documents and nodded in approval. "This is solid. Your house is completely protected, and the fact that he did this without you asking says something, Eleanor." "What does it say?" "That maybe, just maybe, he's starting to truly understand what he did." The months kept passing. Every 30 days, like clockwork, an envelope appeared in my mailbox with money and a short note from Devin. "Thinking of you, Mom. Hope you're well. Luna must be getting big now. He never asked for anything. He never expected a response. He just fulfilled his promise to pay what he owed." I kept the envelopes in a drawer. I didn't spend the money. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but I recognized the effort. In March, Ken, Mr. Powell's nephew, invited me to dinner. He had landed an excellent job thanks to the contacts I had given him. He wanted to thank me. I accepted, thinking it would be a quick, courteous dinner, but it turned out to be one of the most enjoyable nights I'd had in years. Ken was intelligent, funny, and respectful. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in a long time. When he dropped me off at my house, he said, "I'd like to see you again, Eleanor, if you'd like." "Of course," I surprised myself by saying yes. It wasn't romance. Not yet. Maybe it never would be, but it was company. It was connection. It was the possibility of something new, and that was enough. April arrived with flowers all over the garden and a total sense of renewal. 8 months had passed since that rainy day when Devin and Candace appeared at my door with their suitcases, and I turned them away. 8 months in which I had rebuilt my life piece by piece, turning it into something better than it had ever been. One afternoon, while watering the plants with Luna following me among the flowers, I heard familiar voices in the street. It was Devin. He was talking to Mrs. Jenkins, helping her carry her grocery shopping to her house. I watched him from my garden without him seeing me. He looked different, thinner but stronger. There was something in his posture, in the way he genuinely smiled while talking to the neighbor, that made me realize the change was real. When he finished helping Carol, he saw me. He froze for a second, then raised his hand in a shy wave. I nodded my head. It wasn't much, but it was more than I had given him in months. I saw his face light up with hope before he continued on his way. That night, Ken came for dinner. We had been seeing each other regularly for 2 months. Nothing serious, just dinners, walks in the park, long conversations about life. He never pressured for more, never demanded anything. He was simply there, being good company. "Your garden is beautiful," he commented as we had dinner on the patio. "It's like it exploded with life." "That's how I feel," I replied, smiling. Like I exploded with life after years of being asleep. He took my hand across the table. I'm glad I met this Eleanor, the strong woman who lives for herself. After Ken left, I sat in my living room with Luna on my lap, thinking about everything that had changed. This house that Candace had so despised was now a beautiful refuge. The walls I had painted with my own hands shone under the warm light of the new lamps. The furniture she had called garbage was now clean and tidy, full of character and memory. Every corner told the story of my rebirth. Devon's monthly envelope arrived as usual, but this time there was something else inside, besides the money. A photo. It was of him and Candace in what looked like a park, both smiling genuinely in simple but clean clothes. Behind the photo was a note. We signed up for community cooking classes. Candace learned to make mac and cheese. It's not as good as yours, but she's trying. I'm trying too, Mom, every day. I put the photo away with the other letters. The drawer was full now of 8 months of envelopes, silent apologies, and constant effort. Maybe it was time to acknowledge that effort. In May, Ruth organized a dance group gathering at my house. It was the first time I had opened my home for a celebration since Devon had left. The women arrived with food, laughter, and music. My living room filled with life and joy. We danced, ate, and told stories. Mrs. Jenkins brought old neighborhood photos, and we spent hours reminiscing. "Look at Eleanor," Ruth said.